Hi, and welcome to church. My name is Michelle Hopp, and I serve the Pointed Inch and the Arlington United Methodist Churches. And I'm so happy to have you here with me today. We are starting Advent, where we are waiting for the coming of Jesus Christ. This is the first weekend in Advent. You can see we've got the Advent wreath behind me. We've got the Christmas tree up at Pointed Inch. And this weekend, we're going to be decorating the Arlington Sanctuary with all of its beautiful Christmas finery. And we're also, because it's Advent, we're starting a new sermon series. And this is inspired by Matt Rawls' book, The Redemption of Scrooge, which is based on Charles Dickens' book, A Christmas Carol. And we're going to explore the world through Ebenezer Scrooge, Tiny Tim, and the Cratchits through the eyes of our Christian faith. And along the way, we're going to meet those ghosts, the ghosts of Christmas, past, present, and future, as we learn how to live with and for the people in the world blessed by Jesus. So let's begin. You know, Charles Dickens, he placed his powerful Christmas story in 1800s in England. It was a time of a great divide between the rich and the poor. And Dickens wanted to shed some light on how the rich got richer while the poor got poorer. And as the story begins, the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, is confident that the only goal in life is getting more money. He lives in resentment and fear and watches out only for himself. On the other hand, God's idea of economy says there's enough for all of us, and we are all worthy of joy and freedom and enough to eat and drink. This Advent, will we make a change and move toward living in peace for all? Or will we continue to be chained by the poverty of exclusion? Will we continue to think that other people are not as good as us? Will we exclude them because of that? So if you come to church, you'll be able to see some of the video clips. We can't do that on YouTube because they're copyrighted. But we're going to be looking at a scene, and we'll be using scenes from the 2009 Disney version of A Christmas Carol to learn how stingy and greedy Ebenezer Scrooge is. Do you have a generous spirit this year? Or do you feel like Scrooge and all you want to do is say, bah, humbug? You know, do you know what Scrooge said when those two men asked if he would be willing to make a donation to the poor? I mean, it was right before Christmas. He was being asked, please donate some money for the poor. You know what he said? He said, are there no prisons? I help to support establishments like prisons through paying taxes. I can't afford to make idle people merry. Those who are badly off must be in the prisons and the workhouses and all of those other government-run things. And according to Scrooge's high standards, he didn't want to help anybody who didn't work hard enough. He didn't even want to give his one employee, Mr. Cratchit, 1 day off a year for Christmas. He didn't think he deserved it because Scrooge says, I work on Christmas, you should too. Now, we might be shocked by Scrooge's selfishness. We might think, I'll never be that stingy. But we might also be shocked when we learn about Jesus' economic standards. He tells the story of a landowner and vineyard workers. Let me retell it in a more modern setting. So let's say I own a snow removal business. It's the time of year for that, isn't it? And there was a huge snowstorm last night, and I need a bunch of workers to clear all those sidewalks and driveways, So at 6 a.m., which is really early for me, at 6 a.m., I get up and I go to the local, where else? Curling club, because they quite often have coffee going very early in the morning, around 5, where the locals are gathered to drink their coffee. I hired 10 people to remove snow for $200 cash. It's a pretty good deal for a day of shoveling, I think, anyway. But it keeps snowing and I need more help. So I returned to the curling club at 9 in the morning and I hired 10 more people for the wage of $200 for the day. But I find I need even more help. I return to the curling club at noon, hire 10 more people for the wage of $200 a day. But it's not enough. I still need more workers, and I think I'm up to 3 p.m. now. I'm starting to get myself lost. And a blizzard has started. So I returned to the curling club at 3 p.m. and I hired 10 more people at the wage of $200 a day. But I still need more. So I go back to the curling club at 5 p.m. and I hired 10 more people to remove snow for $200 cash for the day. Well, it's 6 p.m. because I have all these great workers. The shoveling jobs are all done. I gather my 50 workers to hand out the cash. And I ask the people that I hired at 5 p.m. to come up first. And I give them each $200 cash. Then I ask the people that I had hired at 3 p.m. to come forward. And I give them each $200 cash. Then I ask the people that I hired at noon to come forward, and I give them each $200 cash. And next, I ask the people I hired at 9 a.m. to come forward, and I give them each $200 cash. And then finally, I ask the people I hired at 6 a.m. to come forward, and I give them each $200 cash. Well, those early bird workers are ticked off at me. Oh my goodness, they are grumbling and they say, these people you hired last only worked for an hour and I worked all day in the freezing cold. My fingers are all numb, I'm all wet, I'm all tired. And you paid us the same amount, $200. I worked way more. That is not fair. But I tell them, friend, I didn't do you any wrong. Did I agree to pay you $200 cash? Take what belongs to you and go home. I want to give to the people I hired at 5 p.m. the same that I give to you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my belongings? Or are you resentful because I am so generous? Ooh, that cuts, doesn't it, a little bit? You know, God's grace is like this. God offers this amazing gift of grace to you. But what happens when God offers grace to someone you don't think deserves it? Isn't that a really tough pill to swallow? In my Arlington church, one of our food pantry patrons died recently, and she's a young mom, has 4 children under 18. Now, she never came to church, but she was a faithful patron of the food pantry, and we've offered to host her funeral service at our church at no charge. And one member has anonymously paid the church fee. Other members, plus our food pantry there, the Prairie Pride Food Pantry, they're all going to be making, food for a meal for this family. Now, some of us might struggle with a free funeral because those of us who have loved ones who have died, we've spent a lot of money on those ourselves. Or maybe got a break because we were members of a church. But we might think, this woman, she never set foot into a church service. Why does she deserve a free funeral? But what does God's economy teach us? That God extends grace to everyone, and so must we. After Scrooge shuts down any donations to the poor, he goes home, climbs into bed, and much to his surprise, his late business partner's ghost visits him with a stern warning against being greedy. Again, if you come on Sunday, you'll see the clips. Mr. Marley's ghost explains that while he was alive, he didn't see that he was squandering his life with too much work. He shouldn't have spent every minute saving every penny. Instead, he should have cared for those who needed his charitable giving. And Mr. Marley tells Scrooge that, hey, Scrooge, you can escape the same fate. Change your ways. Don't be greedy, be generous. Scrooge, you need to see the value of every single person. Jesus told of a rich man who lived a carefree, happy, and luxurious life. This is a story we talked about last week too, but it's so important. One day, Lazarus, who was a diseased beggar, was laid at the rich man's door. And poor Lazarus, who was starving, he would have given anything to get just the scraps of food from the rich man's table. But the rich man ignored him, stepped around him, stepped over him when he left his door, his gate. And poor Lazarus lay there, starving, no food, terribly sick. And all of the dogs around him were gathering and licking the wounds on his body, on his legs. Well, finally, the beggar died, and the angels carried him up to heaven to be with Father Abraham. And this is the place of the righteous dead. And the rich man also died, and his soul didn't go to paradise or to heaven. It went to Tartarus, or hell, we call it. And in torment, the rich man saw Lazarus in the far distance with Abraham. And the rich man yelled, "Father Abraham, have some pity. Send Lazarus over here, right now, to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I'm in anguish with all these flames." But Abraham said to the rich man, "Son, remember that you had everything that you wanted during your lifetime, and Lazarus had nothing. So now he's here with me being comforted, and you're in anguish. And besides, there's a great chasm between us, separating us, and anyone wanting to come to you from here is stopped at its edge, and no one there can cross over." The rich man never saw the value of the beggar. He never saw him as a child of God. Even in death, he sees Lazarus as his servant. He says, "Send Lazarus to dip his finger in water and cool my tongue." The rich man is tormented because he is too stubborn to see that the beggar's life is as important as his own. He can't cross the chasm between heaven and hell because of this. Now, in Poinette last week, the police department sponsored Stuff the Squad at the Piggly Wiggly, and I was able to participate that as a police chaplain. And people were encouraged to buy groceries at the Piggly Wiggly to stock the food pantry in Poinette for the holidays. Now, here's a question for you. When you are asked to donate food at the food pantry, what do you do? Do you pull a Scrooge and just say no? Do you say that your taxes already pay for food stamps or SNAP cards? Or do you go through your pantry and find your expired or unwanted food and donate it? Do you think that these substandard items are okay for food pantry patrons? Because, well, they don't work as hard as I do. Or do you donate a cart full of the best groceries you can buy? Are you generous towards a person who is less fortunate than you are? You know, last Saturday, the most beautiful thing that I saw was a car full of 3 women, 3 different generations. There was grandma, there was mom, there was the daughter. And grandma had a really hard time getting around. She had a walker. And so they're all helping her get into the store, onto a motorized scooter, and she did her shopping at Piggly Wiggly. And they came out with a cart, a huge cart full of food. Every bit of food was for the food pantry. They had made this trip, which was really difficult for Grandma, because they wanted to give their best to the people in need. That's really what Christmas is all about. Do you see the value of each person as a child of God? Or do you struggle with the incorrect thought that you are better than another person? Let's ask God to help us break free from the chains of greed and entitlement that weigh us down. I invite you to join me in a prayer that was written by Matt Rawle. Gracious God, give us eyes to see the unhappy and the misunderstood, and the ears to hear their story. Help us share Christ through humble invitation, especially with those who need healing. May Christ's welcoming spirit live within us. Amen. The miracle may just be beginning in you for the sake of the world. God bless us, everyone. I will send you out into your week with a blessing, a benediction. There's a little Scrooge in each one of us, yearning to thaw and love again. This week, may you be visited by a surprising peace. And when you feel that peace, know that that miracle has begun within you for the sake of the whole world. May you be blessed by the God who loves you deeply, by Jesus, the true gift of God for each of us, and the Spirit who shows up just in time. Amen.